Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on incident management best practices for a new year. I'm Alex Terlecki with the Colorado Special Districts Pool. Like our title suggests, and the title on the slide suggests, we're going to talk today about how to start your new year off on the right foot in regard to incident management, and talk about best practices for maximizing safety and minimizing loss. So for today's session, we'll take you through the basics of incident management. Again, talk about best practices to elevate your current program or get a program started if you don't currently have one, and also highlight certain areas such as benefits of near-miss reporting, importance of record keeping, data tracking, and much more. So today our presenter is Josh Barkley, the risk control consultant for the CSD pool. Josh has an MS in occupational safety and health, and he credits his education as giving him the foundation to become a jack of all trades in safety, risk management, and loss prevention. Josh has worked in a wide variety of fields, including manufacturing, construction, oil and gas, and other environments. In addition to his extensive safety background, his biggest strength is his people skills, and that'll come out today in his presentation. Few housekeeping items to discuss. We have our chat box active today. Just want to say hello to everybody, all of our members, brokers, agents, and affiliates here. It's good to see everybody this morning, at least via text. If you have questions throughout today's session, go ahead and chat them in the box there. We're going to leave a pretty good chunk of time open at the end, hopefully, to answer anything that lingers. So as you're working through today's slides with Josh, note down any questions you have, type them in, save them for the end, and we want to talk to you about what's going on. We have a copy of the slides available for download in the files box above. That's a PDF. So you can go ahead and download that to refer back to later. And we are also going to be sending out a recording of today's session to the same email that you would have received all these reminders for today's webinar too. And lastly, it's an audio only webinar, so please mute your mics if you got them on. I'm going to try to do that on our end. And I think that covers everything. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh this morning. How are you today? Thanks, Josh.
Hey, Alex, I'm doing good. Thank you for that. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and spending a little bit of time with us today. As Alex mentioned, we're going to talk about the importance of incident management. I really just want to give you guys just kind of a few tips and tricks and maybe some ideas to take into the new year. This is a very extensive and can be kind of high level topic here, but I just want to kind of hit some of the basics, and as Alex said, leave some time at the end for questions if you guys have anything that you would like to discuss. Hoping to get some feedback there, so keep that in mind as we work through these slides. Diving in, just a quick agenda and some things we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about a bird's eye view overview of incident management, what exactly it is. Incident management is kind of takes a number of forms throughout this presentation. So I want to make sure and explain those clearly and make it easier to understand as far as what we're talking about. We're going to talk about why it's important. And then we have basically a 3-phase approach to incident management here. That's data management, incident management, and case management. We're going to talk about the 3 of those and how they basically work in a continuous circle and have a life cycle as far as that goes. We're going to talk about how we track and trend data in order to prevent incidents altogether. We're going to talk about what happens immediately after a workplace incident. And then we're going to talk about how you can be more involved and more diligent with the case management piece of an incident in your workplace in order to, again, maximize the safety and minimize costs. All right. So incident management, what exactly is it? Incident management, I said, kind of takes a number of forms here. If we're talking about incident management as a whole, that would be how we prevent, prepare, and address accidents and things of that nature as they happen in our workplace. I want to highlight the difference between incident and accident here. We're going to use the term incident throughout this presentation, but there is a difference between what we would call an incident versus what we call an accident. So, an incident would be something that happens in the workplace that has an unwanted outcome. This may can entail things like a near miss or a minor first aid injury, right? If I'm walking through a plant and I have a hard hat on and something falls on my head and it hits the hard hat, that's what we would kind of tab as a near miss, right? An incident would be something that happens that again requires maybe a minor treatment or minor first aid. If I'm walking through a building and I trip over a electrical cord that's running along the ground, an extension cord, I fall and I get up and dust myself off. No harm, no foul. But we would record that as an incident. An accident would be, in this case, something that causes a loss. So an accident would be if I tripped over that same electrical cord and I turned an ankle or sprained a knee or tried to catch myself on the way down and broke a wrist or something like that. So when we talk about incident management and when we go into the recording and data tracking phase of this presentation, I want you guys to keep that in mind. We're going to dive into that pretty heavy, but recording and classifying appropriately incidents and accidents that we see in our organizations. So moving on from that, what are the phases of the management process? We talked about that a little bit on the first slide, but the management that happens immediately after an incident, then the case management, and then the data management. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the leading and lagging indicators that we can use for that data. We're going to talk about what those mean and how to track those appropriately. We're going to talk about also, as far as the case management and things like that, we're going to talk about primary costs of injuries, of accidents, secondary costs, tertiary costs, and how those can stack up over time if we're not managing those cases correctly. And lastly, we're just going to talk about developing effective methods. So the importance of that within your organization, and we're going to kind of weave that in throughout the slides here, some tips and tricks on how to get some sort of framework set up if you don't currently have one in your organization. Excuse me. Okay, so why is this a big deal? A chart here that I want to show you. If you watched or listened to my presentation at the SDA conference this year, this might look familiar to you. This is the average amount incurred on new claims, and we have a 4.5 year running total here, showing cost for our pool, for the state of Colorado, for the United States as a whole, and then private entity versus public entity. So 2 things to point out here. If you see at the bottom, public entities by far are seeing higher incurred costs per claim. So that $9,970 total there is the average amount that public entities are paying per claim, right? Per workers' compensation claim. If you have someone have an injury on the job site, you can pretty well safely assume that you're paying 10 grand for a claim. If you look at the top in our pool, we're not far behind that at $8,750. Public entities and the pool in particular are falling behind a little bit as compared to the state and the country. So keeping that in mind, as we move through the presentation, I want you to think about, think back to your last incident that you had. Think about the process that you went through. Think about the kind of the hoops you had to jump through with filing claims, communicating with adjusters, staying in touch with your employees, the costs, the doctors visits, the release notices, all of those things. Think about kind of how you went through that process and how maybe it could have been improved and how we could have done it more efficiently, right? We're going to talk about that as we go through the presentation, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things here, and this being one of them. You are basically looking at a $10,000 cost every time you have an incident. In this case, we would call it an accident on our job sites, right? So moving on, also, this is a percentage of new claims that total over $100,000. And these are percentages over the last 4 full years that we have, 2019 to 2022. Look at the pool numbers at the top. We had a really rough 2019 and 2020, kind of got it back down to normal numbers here in the last couple of years. But this chart is the same as the last, where public entities and the pool itself are falling behind as compared to other sectors of business. So keeping these numbers in mind and keeping these graphs in mind kind of leads me into the next thing that we're going to talk about. How do we manage data appropriately and prevent these injuries from happening altogether? That's the name of the game, right? If we could cut those numbers by 20%, that would be huge, right? But if we could prevent these these incidents altogether, those numbers look a lot different, right? We've talked a number of times that our employees are our best assets. So protecting them and making them understand that a safe workplace is our number one goal is really what we're looking for here before we even talk about the incident management piece and the case management, right? So I want everybody to ask ourselves, what tools do you currently have within your organization to track and trend incidents? And when we talk about incidents here, we want to talk about the near misses. We want to talk about the incidents that resulted in no loss. And we want to talk about the accidents that resulted in loss. Do you have a way to track any of them? Are you tracking the accident piece, but not the near miss piece, right? I think that's really important. It's something that I want to take a minute to highlight here. If you are not tracking near misses, you are doing yourself a disservice. And we're gonna talk about that a little further in depth as we move through the presentation. But think about that, if you would, as we go through this. What are some examples of leading and lagging indicators that we can use to better address hazards? So if you guys want to throw in the chat, is anyone familiar with the term leading and lagging indicators? And if so, give me some examples of that. I'm going to give you guys a second and we'll come back to that. But I'm curious to know our knowledge level on leading and lagging indicators. Is that something that we're familiar with? Next is, what's the state of our safety culture? You probably heard me, if you've listened to me talk in the past, you've heard me use that term plenty. If we do not have a safety culture, this is going to be much, much more difficult to get off the ground. We want to promote an environment where our employees tell us what's happening, right? I mentioned that we need to be reporting near misses. If you don't have a good safety culture, do you think that your employees are going to let you know when they have a near miss? Probably not. If we create an environment where employees are punished for reporting hazards or near misses, for fear of repercussion or anything like that, we're not going to be able to gather the data that we need to prevent some of the accidents and injuries that we're seeing. So making sure that we have some sort of framework in place, some sort of culture that promotes employee responsiveness, promotes reporting, promotes speaking up about things that they are seeing in the field. If we don't have that, that's going to make things much more difficult, especially some of the things that we want to highlight in this presentation, right? Again, do we have a process for reporting near misses and outstanding safety hazards? So do you have a little black box? Do you have a platform that employees can submit concerns? Do you have an appropriate reporting structure where they notify their supervisor and the supervisor notifies upper management, et cetera, et cetera? Do your employees know the appropriate chain of command for reporting these things? And do your employees feel like they are taken seriously when they do report these things, right? So having all of these tools and frameworks in place is very important to get out ahead of these accidents to begin with. But if we don't have the culture and tools in place, then we're going to be kind of in an uphill battle here. So I see a couple of chats here. Workplace inspections are a leading indicator. Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Tracy. Toolbox talks. Yes, that would also count. So let's talk about leading and lagging indicators really quick. Leading indicators are basically hazards and issues that we know of that we need to be apprised to as an organization in order to prevent injuries and accidents, right? So an example of that would be if I am a fire district, then obviously I work in and around dangerous things all the time. Fires are hot. They they are destructive. They are dangerous in every way, shape, and form, right? So knowing that I am sending employees to dangerous locations to do dangerous work would be an example of a leading indicator, right? The type of industry that I'm in, the type of work that I do, the environment that I work in. If we have folks that are out on icy roads and up in our mountain areas, doing work in freezing temperatures, that would be a leading indicator, right? It's basically sitting down and putting heads together to understand what risks we are exposed to. So lagging indicators would be real-time data that we have based off of what has happened in the past. So leading obviously is looking ahead, lagging indicators are looking back, right? We lagging indicator data is obviously much more accurate. However, we're only able to see that once we've had an incident happen. So the name of the game here, obviously on this slide, is to prevent some of these incidents and accidents. And in that case, the less lagging indicator data we have, the better, right? If we have a very small sample pool of accidents, that means we've done a very good job of primary prevention and identifying some of those leading indicators, right? We're going to talk about that a little further throughout the presentation, but keep those two in mind. We'll come back to that, come back to those topics here in just a bit. Okay, data management. I'll ask you to pop in the chat here as well. Give me on a 1 to 5, 1 being little to no data, 5 being a lot of data. How much data would you say your entity collects as it relates to incidents and accidents? Do you have data that you can refer to? Do you have data that you use? Do you think there needs to be an improvement on what you're recording and what you are tracking? Give me a little bit of feedback in the chat box as we talk about this. So these are basically just some resources that I wanted to point out to you guys here. So if you don't currently track or trend any data within your organization, you absolutely need to start doing that. I mentioned earlier, near misses, you need to be recording those. You need to be tracking those. Incidents with no loss, you need to track those. Obviously, accidents and claims that you filed, you should have some data on those. But we said that we want to use that leading indicator data versus lagging indicator, right? If we can track the near misses, that would be leading indicator, right? We can say, okay, there's been issues with folks tripping and turning ankles in this one area of our facility, right? We've had it happen 4 or 5 times. We know that we've gotten lucky 4 times in a row. Now we need to make sure that we eliminate this before something really bad happens, right? Using internal data is your best bet as far as getting out in front of these numbers and understanding what they mean and what they mean to your organization. So if you don't have that or you feel like it needs to be better, I've got good news. There's other places you can look here. Bullet point number 2 on this slide is the Bureau of Labor Statistics data for your industry. So if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you can find that through Google. There are industry class codes where you can look and see kind of maybe where you rank amongst other organizations in your industry, right? So that would be our library industry, and our library is probably not an industry by itself, but you get the idea, right? Parks and recreation, fire industries, water and sanitation, right? Things like that. You can go and you can see how other members of your business sector are performing as far as injury and accidents go, right? You can also use that to help maybe point you in the right direction on some of the things that you're potentially seeing in your entities. So encourage you to check that out, as well as the OSHA recordable injury data. So the OSHA recordable injury data is going to be for private entity only. However, we see a lot of the same commonalities between private sector and public sector, right? And to be totally transparent, oftentimes the private sector is better at addressing some of these issues than the public sector is, as referenced by some of those charts that we saw earlier, right? So same thing there, understanding where these resources are and kind of where your entity falls in the classification system is really helpful to just see maybe see what some of the low hanging fruit is, right? Or see where maybe where we could look internally to help get out in front of some of these things. Insurance industry top causes of loss. So some of the larger national insurance firms, every year they produce top causes of loss documents as far as what they're seeing from workers' comp management. You might imagine every single year after year, it is slips, trips, and falls are our number one top cause of loss, right? That should be a wake-up call to everyone. If we don't have a plan in place to alleviate or eliminate slips, trips, and falls, we're probably going to have a claim about that. We're in Colorado. I'm assuming most of us are in Colorado. It's about to get cold. It's about to get snowy. It's about to get icy. It's prime time for slips, trips, and falls. And as that the graph showed that we looked at earlier, if you have a claim based off of a slip on an ice, you can basically go ahead and write a check for 10 grand, right? That's probably what it's going to come out to, if not more than that. Claims data from the CSD pool. If you've ever met with me, you have likely seen reports that I run based on pool internal data and entity internal data. That is a really great example. If you've ever seen that, that's an example of us looking at lagging indicators, right? I have data on the claims that your entities have experienced over most of you over the life of your partnership with the pool. So we're looking at things that have happened in the past. We're looking at different sets of data there. We're looking at some really neat things. We're looking at how old your employees are that are getting hurt. We're looking at the age of the claimants. We're looking at their date of hires. We're looking at, is it someone who's been here for 20 years? Is it someone who's been here for 20 days? Do we have a complacency problem with some of our longer tenured employees? Do we have an onboarding problem with some of the newer employees that maybe don't understand the processes and the frameworks that you have in place? We look at the month that you're seeing injuries. So do you have a wintertime problem? Do you have a summertime problem? Do you have all year problem, right? That's really a deep dive into where your losses are coming from, and a really good way to kind of pinpoint, again, some of that low hanging fruit where you could really focus your efforts for your safety committees, and your, for your upper management and maybe even your board level, things that you need to focus on as you move forward that would really help you out long term. Lastly here, third-party data tracking services and platforms. This is a shameless plug here for a platform that we use called Vector EHS. I believe that's hyperlinked there. If you guys can click on that, I'm not sure, that'll take you to some information about that. A little bit of a disclaimer, that would be probably for our larger districts. Probably need to be looking at that if you have 50 plus employees. That's a really good tool, a really good platform to use to track the near misses, the incidents, no loss, the accidents, things like that. If you don't have a third-party data tracking system, do not fret over that. We realize that some of the smaller districts, the business needs are different. Even tracking, that internally in a spreadsheet is a good way to check that box, if you will. All right, I'm looking at really quick before we move to this. I'm looking at some of the chats here. Twos, threes, and fours on our feelings about data management, working on establishing a better safety culture, after action reviews. Great, thank you. For struggle with near miss reporting, accident, number of inspections, hazards. Wonderful. Okay, good feedback. Thank you guys for that. Okay, so I wanted to take a minute on this graphic here. Take a picture of this if you guys are sitting there, kind of drifting in and out of this presentation here. Grab your phone and take a picture of that. This would be a really valuable tool to use as you move forward into the new year. This is called Heinrich's triangle, and this relates to basically the probability of something serious as you allow unsafe acts to happen over time, right? So if we look at the bottom of the pyramid where it says unsafe act, you can basically guarantee that for roughly every 30,000 unsafe acts, and I know that's a lot, but they happen every day and they add up quickly. Every 30,000 unsafe acts results in 3,000 near misses. And for every 3,000 near misses, we have about 300 minor injuries. For every 300 minor injuries, we have 30 lost time or serious injuries. And then for every 30 lost time or serious injury, we have one fatality, right? So if you go from bottom to top, for every 30,000 unsafe acts that are performed in our entities, in our industries, we're going to have one fatality if we don't work on getting out ahead of these things, right? Tracking, trending that data, understanding where our weaknesses are, understanding how to prevent these things from happening entirely is the best way to make sure that that fatality number stays at zero. You'll see along the sides there my terms that I've used earlier in the presentation: leading indicators and lagging indicators. So if you look on the left, the lagging indicators, we want to use the lagging indicators near the unsafe acts and near miss portion of the pyramid, right? If we're looking at fatality lagging indicators, that's not good. We do not want that. We don't want to look back and say, we've had 3 fatalities in the last 5 years. Now's the time to get serious about tracking incidents and understanding hazards and mitigating hazards, right? On the other side of the pyramid, using those leading indicators, we want to use the leading indicators to avoid the obvious exposures that could lead to fatalities, right? We want to say, hey, we're in a really dangerous field. We need to make for certain that we have our processes and our processes and our structures shored up for things that are dangerous and could lead to fatalities. We want to start at the top with the leading indicators and work our way down. So any questions about that? Everybody feel pretty good about this? Hope so. Again, if you haven't done already, take a picture of it and use this in your safety committees. Show it to your management. Use this as a kind of a roadmap when you're discussing hazard mitigation and incident trending and things like that. Okay, so we've talked about our primary prevention as our kind of phase one in our data management. How do we avoid injuries altogether? But now we're going to move into a situation where we've had an incident, in this case, an accident that has resulted in loss, right? What happens immediately following an incident? So if you don't have structures in place or framework for this, I would encourage that as well. This is kind of like the first 48 on a crime scene or a missing persons report, right? We want to collect all relevant information and do everything we can to make sure that we have an accurate representation of what exactly happened. First things first is prioritize safety. So if you have a situation where someone gets hurt, the main thing is to make sure that one incident doesn't turn into more than one. We don't want one injury to turn into 4 or 5, whether that be from an unsafe area or piece of equipment, or whether it's other people trying to rescue someone else, right? If you've all had confined space training with me before, we talk about the majority of confined space fatalities are from other people going in to rescue their friends, right? It's human nature. It's the first thing we want to do, but it's important to secure that scene, secure that area, and make sure that um, we minimize our losses there with the just the one injury and not turn it into more than one. Next, we're obviously administering the first aid or the appropriate medical care to the person that's been hurt. We want to make sure that we are treating that correctly and accurately and quickly. 9 times out of 10, the things that we are seeing, knock on wood, and the things that we want to see are minor injuries that may require some sort of first aid or a trip to the clinic. But making sure we diagnose that appropriately and quickly is step 2 of this. Number 3, we want to report this through appropriate channels. So we want to notify other workers. We want to notify our supervisors. We want to notify the appropriate people to stay away from the area. Notify the appropriate people to come into the area, right? If you have some sort of rescue team or some sort of designated safety team or whatever that looks like in your organization, but making sure that everybody is notified in order to stay away from the area or get to it if they need to be there. Next is secure the scene. So I mentioned my crime scene analogy earlier, right? We want to make sure that everything stays as is. And why are we doing that? Well, we want to make sure that we understand every detail that led up to this accident. Was it a faulty piece of equipment? Was it a leak in the roof that caused a puddle on the floor that froze over that caused a slip, trip, and fall? Right? Was it something that we had no idea that existed, but jumped up and bit us and caused an accident? Was it something that we knew about, that we've documented a number of times, but we just hadn't fixed yet? All of those things are very important as it pertains to not only the case management piece, but the prevention piece moving forward, right? Remember, we talked about we wanted that data, we wanted that information in order to get out ahead of these things and make sure that they don't happen in the future. And that goes kind of hand in hand with gather that useful information, right? Take witness statements. I would assume that most of you probably have some sort of incident reporting form. Get information from other people on the work crew, get information from other people who were there, people who saw what happened, witnessed what happened, things like that. It's really important to get full information here because there are instances where your case management changes significantly if there were things going on like horseplay, or if there were people who were directly violating company protocols and procedures, right? You need to know those things as an entity in order to manage your case appropriately. If there was horseplay going on, or let's say if someone came to work under the influence, that significantly changes the case management piece that we're going to talk about as we move forward. So understanding all the extenuating circumstances and what led up to the accident is very important as you move forward from the case management standpoint and from the prevention standpoint in the future. I want to show you guys this really quickly as well. So we want to reiterate that our employees are, again, our best asset, right? We don't have a functioning business if we don't have employees to run it, right? And I want to highlight this piece because I feel like a lot of people maybe overlook some of these pieces of the cost part, unless you have been in the claims industry or been on the administrative side of that within your entity. You probably don't realize all of these. So when you have an accident, you have the primary, secondary, and tertiary costs, right? So we have the immediate medical attention. We have that lost production for the day if we have to shut things down, shut equipment down. If we have something like a vehicle accident, we have property equipment damage along with an injury, right? Along with the medical care. Those things like transport to the medical facilities, things that we have to do to take care of our people immediately. Then we have the secondary costs, those follow-up doctor's visit, those surgeries, procedures that may come out of that, physical therapy, if we're paying someone for long-term disability or short-term disability. All of these things are adding up as time goes on after this initial accident, right? Tertiary costs being a lost production over time, lost personnel, rehire and retraining new employees. Heaven forbid, if you have to replace someone, if they're out for an extended period of time, you got to have someone come in behind them and fill their shoes. We all know how difficult that is right now to hire folks and retain good folks, right? That's a burden that you do not want if you can avoid it. And lastly, the potential for litigation, right? If you as an entity are not doing your due diligence to provide a safe and healthful workplace, then you are potentially on the hook for additional costs there if an employee decides to sue you. So keeping this in mind as they pertain to those two charts that we saw earlier, that $10,000 a claim number that you are pretty much guaranteed to have, and those claims that we see within the pool that are over $100,000, right? Think about that from some of these serious injuries that we have, a slip, trip, and fall resulting in someone trying to catch themselves and tearing up a rotator cuff, right? You've got the immediate medical attention, transporting to medical facilities. You've got follow-up doctor's visits. You got physical therapy, surgeries. If they're out for an extended period of time, disability pay. You've got to rehire and retrain someone to come in because that person's now out for 6 months, right? All of these things go into your incident management and case management, understanding that these things are lurking if you do not manage appropriately, right? Okay, lastly, case management. And this is something I want to spend some time on here. I think that this is probably the part that maybe we know least about, and me included, right? I'm learning every day. But what is your role as an entity after you have an incident and how you manage the case? The idea is that we want to get folks back to work as quickly as possible, right? We want that from a business standpoint. And 9 times out of 10, from my experience, our employees want that as well, right? They don't want to be at home on short-term disability, making 60% of their salary or whatever that looks like, right? They want to get back to work. They want to contribute. They want to be there. They want to be off the couch and back to normal from my experience, at least. So what does your role look like in order to help them do that, in order to get them back quickly? Right, understanding what that means. So I want to disarm the room here a minute as well. This does not mean that we are foregoing appropriate medical care. This does not mean that we are in any way shorting or cheating the employee out of the appropriate treatment and things that they deserve. It's not cutting corners. It is not doing anything halfway or shady or anything like that, right? This is simply about being efficient and doing things correctly and timely. Some very important things here would be to establish some sort of framework, again, on what that looks like. So you can build framework, procedures, protocols internally that address how we want to get people back to work. There are return to work programs that are all over the internet. I can help out with those also, but address that internally on how we want to get employees back to work as quickly, as efficiently as possible, right? Keeping in mind that we're not going to, violate any, well, let me hold off on that. Know your designated medical providers. So this one is really important too. How many of you would say that you have actually met your designated medical provider and understand who those folks are for your district? I would say maybe half, but probably less than that would be my guess. So knowing these people and communicating with them and understanding the services they provide is very, very important. Not only that, but them understanding what we do is important, right? We're going to talk a little bit about on the next slide some tips and tricks for this piece, but having a relationship with those folks and understanding what they do and how they can help us manage cases effectively is very, very important. Document everything. So this is something that I think we could all get better about. Documenting when doctor's appointments are, documenting if the employee has gone to them, documenting the everything that we saw at the scene of the accident, right? I mentioned that earlier. Documenting the recommended treatment and documenting the communication with medical providers, with adjusters, with claims folks, with all of those people, right? Documenting it and having that in front of you to be efficient with it is key. Communicate with the employee. This is also key, right? And we want to document that as well. How are they feeling? What are their thoughts? Do they have questions? Do they have concerns on their medical treatment? Do they feel like they need to see a different doctor or a different specialist? Are they telling you everything that the doctor has told them? Right? Maybe your employee says, "I've got to be off of work for 45 days." But maybe the doctor said that they needed to be off of work for 60 days, right? Making sure that everybody is on the same page and communication there as far as return to work is helpful. And then lastly, investigate. We want to investigate the scene of the accident, like we said on the last slide. But we also want to investigate, kind of what's happening as things move forward. When you take witness statements and things like that, like I mentioned on the last slide, from people who were around or saw an accident or incident, things like horseplay and folks being under the influence can greatly affect payout amounts, can greatly affect things that happen in case management, right? Understanding that and having that on file is important for you as an entity. Another thing to keep in mind, and we're not trying to place blame. This is not the name of the game here. It's not to blame an employee. It's not to blame any particular supervisor. It's not to blame systems. It's simply just to gather information and again, address these things appropriately and accurately. Another thing to investigate is, let's say that I work for a public entity, but on the weekends I am a avid weightlifter, right? And let's say that I was weightlifting with my buddies on a Sunday night and I tweaked my back. And then I walk in Monday morning and I've been at work for an hour and my back flares up and I blame it on a workplace incident, right? I say, oh, I was moving my chair and my back blew out. Well, is that accurate? Is this technically a workplace injury? I know that you know that I'm a weightlifter on the weekends, and you know that I also do contract work for my neighbors, and I was lifting heavy bags of this and that and the other, right? Knowing all of that information can greatly improve your efficiency in managing these claims. So I encourage you to fact find as much as possible when things like this arrive, because it can only help you in the long run. Okay. Couple more tips and tricks here as far as case management goes. This is really important. Make sure that your designated medical providers and your ATPs are level 2 accredited through the Colorado Division of Workers' Compensation. If you do not know what that means, reach out to me after the presentation and we'll get you in touch with the right people on that. But that basically means that they are authorized and accredited to treat workers' compensation injuries. They know kind of the ins and outs of the case management process for that, and they're doing their due diligence to make sure they stay within those boundaries. Have that conversation with your medical providers and make sure that they have that accreditation if you haven't already. Next, and I think this one's really key, avoid emergency room at all costs for non-life-threatening injuries. I feel like a lot of times, especially in the public sector, if someone gets hurt and it's anything more than a Band-Aid, we might send them to the emergency room just to make sure everything's okay, right? Well, again, we want to make sure that our employees get the appropriate care that they need. So if it is an emergency, by all means, send them there. but do not send them to an emergency room for a twisted ankle or for a minor cut or something like that, right? An emergency room bill is astronomical, and you will get the same treatment from your medical providers at your clinics for like a quarter of the cost, right? So have hospitals and emergency rooms at the bottom of the list only for those life-threatening and serious injuries, right? Send them to the clinic in any time possible if that's a viable option. Next is be aware of restrictions after an injury and offer light duty if possible. So we'll use my torn rotator cuff injury example that I gave a couple of slides ago. I can do light duty with a torn rotator cuff. I can enter things in a computer. I can sit at a desk. I can do all of that. That is much better and much more efficient for everyone involved rather than me sitting at home and doing nothing, right? Understand what those restrictions are from the medical providers, right? We do not want to do anything, again, to put our employees' health in jeopardy or to hinder this process at all, but making sure that we have options available for people to come back and work and do things on a light duty modification if we can do that. Stay in contact with your claims adjusters and communicate with them. We have really good claims adjusters that are dedicated within the pool, are dedicated to only pool claims, right? They are working for us and for us only. So giving them as much information as possible and staying in touch with them is going to help them close those claims out quicker and more efficiently, right? Lastly, making sure all employees are attending their follow-up appointments. This one's really crucial as well. You have the right to be involved and in the know that they are showing up to the appointments that they are prescribed, right? If they have to go see a specialist, a lot of times that's a 20, 30-day lag time before they can get into these folks. If they miss that appointment, you can tack another 30 days on to when they're going to get the opportunity to see that person again. So making sure that we are staying efficient with our visits and our follow-ups and our medical care is something that we can do to really kind of move this forward and be more efficient with our case management. All right. Okay. Last graph I'm going to show you here, but I wanted to highlight this after some of the things we've talked about. This is an instance where the pool is doing much better than the rest of our peers here. This is average days open on a new claim. The pool's right at 70. We'll round up to 75 days open on a new claim. But look at the public entities down there at the bottom, right? 97 days open on a new claim. That's an additional 2 weeks, 2 weeks plus on claims. So this we could attribute to, like I said, we have really good claims adjusters and folks that are working full time for us that help people close out claims and get them back to work as quick as possible. That shows the importance of communicating with them and understanding kind of where they can help us and the information they need to move these things along. But again, the public entities are falling behind big time on that. If we could cut that number by 10%, that's a week shaved off of that, right? And you think about our $10,000 number that we showed earlier, that's going to make that number go down significantly, right? So understanding some of these things that we have in place and some of these tips and tricks that we've talked about to help us close these claims out quicker and get people back to work is going to really help us in the long run as far as claim costs, those primary, secondary, tertiary costs that we talked about, and getting people back to 100% and back to work. Okay, coming to the end here, I want to leave about 10 minutes for some questions, but I want to close this out here relatively quickly. So have a plan. If you don't have internal framework for reporting, if you don't have internal framework for a return to work policy, please get that in place. I can help you with that. Reach out to me. I'm available anytime, all the time. I'll come visit. We'll talk about it. We'll iron it out, and we'll get you set up with something in place to be more efficient with this case management and incident management. Next is to empower your employees. We talked about the culture and we talked about the reporting structure. If they don't feel like they're heard and they do not feel empowered, you're not going to get that leading indicator data that you want in order to prevent these injuries and accidents altogether, right? Creating a culture that promotes communication and reporting is crucial, and that even goes for the post incident management, right? If employees know that their input is valued and they know that your entity takes safety seriously, you're going to be much more likely to get feedback and valuable information from people, as opposed to if you have a culture problem or an environment where they're not reporting things or they don't feel valued, right? Next, record and manage data. We've talked about that extensively throughout this. If you don't have data tracking, please use some of those resources that I showed on one of the previous slides, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Use the pool. Call me. I will gladly come and show you the data that I have for your entities. I have them for each and every one of you, and I'm happy to share that with you so you can kind of hone in on where we need to be focusing, right? And then lastly is know our responsibilities as an employer. Know what you're allowed to do and what you're not, right? Again, we don't want to violate any sort of HIPAA laws or anything like that. We don't want to cut corners. We don't want to cheat any of our employees out of medical care, but we do want to be efficient and we do want to be accurate, right? And you have a right to be involved in the claims process and in the case management process to make sure things are moving as they should and to make sure that people are getting back to work as quickly and as healthy as they can be, right? Knowing how you fit into that process is key, and understanding that as we move into a new year, I really think we can make some vast improvements on some of those graphs that we saw, some of those numbers that we have throughout the pool, right? Okay, that's it for us. It for me. Remember that you can take steps to improve incident management at your district. If we maximize safety around our entities, then we're going to minimize loss in the long run, right? You have my email there at the bottom of the page. Please use that. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And I would love to open it up for discussion here for just our last 8 minutes or so. If you guys want to turn your mics on, we can talk and take questions. If you want to type things in the chat box, we can do that. But I want to give us a few minutes for some questions and discussion. Since I kind of ran over this at a really high level, I want to make sure that we don't leave anything unaddressed. So I'll let you do that now. Mics, chat box, whatever you guys want to do. Either one will work.
All right, great. We'll take a little pause here. If anybody has any questions about getting their program started or wanted to share any things that they're currently doing at their district in the chat box, it'd be a great time to chat about that. Josh is here to answer your questions for the next 8 minutes. I'd love to hear what's going on at everybody's district. Is anybody doing anything with incident management that might be worth sharing to help members get started when they don't currently have something in place? While you're thinking about that or thinking about getting any questions together, just want to reiterate what we mentioned earlier, that we do have a partnership with Vector Solutions for an incident management software. That's what that link is in the chat box there. It's Vector EHS Incident Management Reporting. And we're offering the first year free to any of our members that want to sign up and use the program to help with incident management tracking. If you click on that link, you can head over to our website to learn more about it. You can email us and request a demo. And again, as Josh had mentioned, it's scaled in a way that it's most suitable for people that have dedicated personnel, since the process for implementation is pretty involved and the incident tracking is pretty involved. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look and see if it's the right fit for your district. Again, we're offering the first year free to our membership, and the great tool to get started tracking your incidents, reporting accidents, managing claims, and stuff like that. All right, Josh,
Okay.
I see some comments coming through if you wanted to chat about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. So Dominique says we have a safety committee that meets monthly with a member from each department. We will be using this year to create all of the forms, processes, and tracking to create a standard going forward. Great. I think that's really important. I know I plug safety committee in pretty much everything that I talk about, but safety committee is your number one foundational tool for that culture that we talk about, right? People from different departments and people of all levels getting together and creating a structure for not only addressing and mitigating hazards, but for letting people voice opinions and voice concerns, and getting those, kind of delegated to the appropriate authorities. That's really good feedback there. And for any of you who don't have the safety committee, that is also something that I help out with regularly. Please reach out. I'd be happy to discuss that and offer you some materials, offer you some templates, some plans, some programs to help you kind of get that off the ground as well.
Yeah,
Jackie said,
important to reiterate. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Sorry. Yeah, Jackie says, as mentioned, for the smaller districts, the EHS is not the best fit. Does anyone have a tracking template they're willing to share? If you have something that you would be willing to share, please pass that along. Jackie, I would say that probably the best way to start that, depending on the size of your district, if you have 10 people or if you have 49, right, that may be a little different. But keeping just an Excel spreadsheet is the way. 11 people, perfect. So I would probably do that on a spreadsheet. I have some templates that I can help with, Jackie. If you'll email me afterwards, I'd love to help you out with that. Alex, you had something you were going to say. I cut you off there. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to reiterate, you're offering the consultations or inspections that you do alongside Kyle. And I just want to remind members that these are complimentary, inspections that are consultations that you come out and do. So it's part of your CSD pool membership. So if you wanted to get, in person, eyes on your facilities, or take a look at, where your risks are, where your accidents could be popping up, reach out to Josh or Kyle or any of us, and happy to get you situated with something like that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'll reiterate your reiteration that it's completely free. I cost no money to anybody who is a pool member. So reach out to me. I am a free resource, and I am happy to help at any point. I'll come and visit. I will talk to you on the phone. I'll email you. If you don't want to see me, that's fine. That won't hurt my feelings. But I'm happy to help in any way that I can, and give you access to some of the resources that we have as the pool. So. Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss, or any questions? Got some things coming through the chat. Nobody was brave enough to turn their microphone on. I'm a little disappointed, but that's okay.
Well, we have those disabled. Just wanted to point that out. So
okay.
Nobody's fault. All right. Well, looks like we're
you're trying to talk. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we're pretty good in the chat box. Don't see anything else coming through. So I just wanted to thank you, Josh, for putting this presentation on, and I want to thank our membership as well for for joining us today, and talking through everything, and taking the time out of your day to spend an hour with us. So we appreciate it. It's our last webinar of the year. We'll be back in January. So keep an eye on our events page on our website, csdpool.org/events. We're going to start off January with kind of picking up the thread here with a slips, trips, and falls webinar. So we look forward to seeing everybody else there next month. Have a nice holiday, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, guys. Merry Christmas.